अस्सलामु अलैकुम। हम माज़रत ख़्वाह हैं कि आज हमारी ब्रॉडकास्ट जो है वो कुछ ताख़ीर के साथ शुरू हो रही है। तो आज का हमारा मौजू जो है, जो अहमदी अंजुमन इशाअत इस्लाम आपकी खिदमत में पेश करेगी, वो है सदका। तो ये पिछली दफ़ा हमने ज़कात या जिसे कहते हैं चैरिटी, उस पे बात करनी शुरू की थी। तो ये जो है हम उसी मौजू को आगे बढ़ाते हैं। I apologize for the delay in starting this broadcast. This continues the last week's broadcast, which was on charity, and we will continue with that. Charity that we looked at last time referred to zakat, and that is a specific form of charity. But we want to see whether zakat is the only form of charity that is available to Muslims. In chapter 2, verse 177, the Holy Quran says, "It is not righteousness that you turn your faces towards the east and the west, but righteous is the one who believes in Allah and the last day and the angels and the books." So a righteous person believes in all these things, but then it goes on to say, and gives away wealth out of love for him to the near of kin, and the orphans and the needy and the wayfarer, and to those who ask, and to set slaves free, and keep up prayer and praise the poor. So you can see that it says gives away wealth, and it mentions certain things, and then it says and pays the poor rate, which is generally regarded as zakat. Now, if we look at, if we go back and look at the categories for zakat, you can see that the distribution of zakat is restricted to certain categories. This was in accordance with the other verse that I used last time, and that is zakat is given to the poor, the needy, those engaged in its administration, those whose hearts are made to incline to truth. So this would be non-Muslims who want to learn about Islam, free the captives, those in debt. In the way of Allah is, of course, a more general term which leaves the way open for the authorities to decide, and for the travelers. And there is also a restriction on who cannot receive zakat. This is so that people don't give zakat to each other and say, well, I paid my zakat. So it is forbidden to give zakat to one's parents, grandparents, children, grandchildren, spouses, or the descendants of the Prophet. But in the verse above that we started with, you have a look at that, gives away wealth out of love for him to the near of kin. And you see, pays the poor rate or zakat is shown as a separate category. So, as we saw here, there is a restriction that zakat cannot be given to one's parents, grandparents, etc., etc. But the Holy Quran is saying, gives away wealth to the near of kin. So how? There must be an additional financial sacrifice that Muslims make. So, in addition to their zakat obligations, Muslims are encouraged to make voluntary contributions called sadaqah. Sadaqah is the plural. And at the top, I put the root from which it comes. Its root is or, ball, ha. And if we now go down again, what is the difference between zakat and sadaqah? First of all, zakat is one of the main pillars of Islam, and it is a duty. You must do it. You have to do it. Without paying zakat, you are not fulfilling your duty. Zakat is paid on specific assets that you have: cash, gold, silver, agricultural produce, livestock, and so on. But sadaqah is not actually levied on anything. It's not levied on anything. It's not that you pay, 5% of the value of all the tables and chairs you have in your house. There's no percentage, and there are no categories on which it's levied. For zakat, when you calculate the amount, certain deductions are allowed. But sadaqah, it has no percentage, there are no categories on which it's levied, and there is no calculation, so there are no deductions. It is whatever you want to give. Zakat is to be collected and distributed by an Islamic government, whereas sadaqah is always personal, and it's a personal act of kindness. In our case, as a body, we collect zakat. This was the direction given by the promised Messiah, that zakat money should be sent to the organization, and then it should have a list of the needy and the poor and so on, and it should be distributed to them. Sadaqah you can give directly to someone, but it's better again even to send that to the organization. For example, our center has a free surgery that needs to be financed. It provides medical assistance, testing, medication, etc., regardless of a person's religion or sect or whatever. Whoever turns up and demands medical assistance, they are provided. Now, as we know, there are 4 schools of jurisprudence in Islam called fiqh, and according to some schools of jurisprudence, zakat can be taken forcefully. And the example there is of Hazrat Abu Bakr, who waged war on the tribes who refused to pay zakat after the Holy Prophet's death. So you can see here is another example that during the Holy Prophet's lifetime, zakat was actually paid to the central government. It was sent to Medina. And upon his death, some tribes refused to do that. They said, we'll spend it as we like. And Hazrat Abu Bakr waged war on them. And he said, you know, I will continue with this even if they owe 1 penny in zakat, and I should take it from them. And the central government can take punitive measures against non-payers, as the example of Hazrat Abu Bakr that I just gave. But sadaqah is not enforced. The reason is obvious. It's not mandatory. There are no categories on which it's levied. There's no percentage. It's a personal act of kindness that Islam says you must do. As the verse that I read out at the top. Abandoning zakat payment is an act of war. As I just mentioned, not giving sadaqah is not. Zakat has thresholds and bands, whereas sadaqah does not. So zakat acts quite a lot like a modern tax, income tax or wealth tax. Or, I suppose a wealth tax description is closer than income tax. Zakat has, sorry, we've done that. Zakat was preferably distributed where it was collected, whereas sadaqah can be spent anywhere. So the preference is that if you collect zakat from this area, then the poor of this area are the ones who are first in line for its distribution. And then you fan out from that. It goes back to the verse of the Holy Quran, the near neighbor, then the far neighbor, near relative, then the far relative. So those, that's what it means. That, but sadaqah can be spent anywhere. It's up to you. Zakat can only be spent on specific categories, which I've listed above, but sadaqah can be given to anyone. And the last one is, zakat is monetary. Zakat is monetary. So if zakat is due, you can't say, here is my Rolex, I give this in zakat. No, if you want to give that Rolex in zakat, you sell the Rolex and you give the cash. It's only strictly monetary. But sadaqah is anything, even kindness, even removing a stone from the footpath so that people don't kick it and get hurt. Even that is charity. A kind word, sympathizing with someone, encouraging someone, talking to someone who's alone and lonely. All of these things are a part of sadaqah. Sadaqah is very wide. It includes money. It doesn't exclude money. But it may be anything. You can give someone a pair of shoes, the example I gave. You can't say, here is my Rolex, take it as zakat. But you can say, here is my Rolex, go and sell it. Or use it even. It's yours. Do whatever you want to do with it. So, and as I mentioned before, the triliteral root of sadaqah is, well, I've written it in English here, SDQ, but the true Arabic letters are Qad, Dal, and Qa. of. They're not exactly SDQ because English doesn't have an equivalent of pod. Um, Arabic has two similar sounding letters. There's seen, and there's pod. You can see that seen is like you're whistling, and pod is a thicker sound. And unfortunately, English only has one S, although people have tried to find ways around it by putting dots on top of S to indicate pod and normal S to be seen. So, but anyway, the triliteral root of Sadaqah, which has many meanings depending on the derivative form of the word. The two key meanings are sidq, which is truthfulness, and siddiq, which is friendship. So we have Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq. Why? Because of his friendship with the Holy Prophet Muhammad. And may also come from the fact that he was a very truthful person, as were all the companions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad. So charity in Islam can be viewed as any act that demonstrates the truth of our love of God and also of one's fraternal love of our fellow human beings. The same twin notions that were echoed by St. Aquinas' words regarding charity, as described in verse 283 as promise made by the Israelites to Allah. So the Quran, you see, provides a spiritual network for possession of wealth and practical guidelines for its distribution. It is said about the Holy Prophet Muhammad that whenever he received anything, he made sure that it was distributed to the needy and the poor before he went to bed. So in the morning, he started afresh, literally without any possession. And the same was true of the companions of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, that they would sacrifice huge amounts for the sake of the community. There is the example, well, there are many examples. There's one of when the Holy Prophet Muhammad made an appeal for funds. This is obviously not zakat because it's a special appeal for funds. And Hazrat Usman Radhiyallahu Ta'ala brought a quarter of what he had. Hazrat Umar brought half of what he had. And Hazrat Abu Bakr Siddiq Radhiyallahu Ta'ala brought everything he had. So they competed, but they competed in who made the greatest sacrifice, not who had the greater number of red camels or a bigger house or more servants or slaves or whatever. And that is not that they didn't trade. That is not that they didn't have employees. They traded. They were businessmen. Hazrat Abu Bakr had a shop, I think he sold cloth and so on. Hazrat Usman was a very large, big businessman, as can be seen when Muslims had difficulty accessing water because they were being charged excessively. He went and asked the owner, "How much do you want?" And the owner said, whatever it was, and he said, "Here you are, here's cash. It's now mine. The well is now mine." And he went and said to the Holy Prophet, "From now, today, anyone can go and take water from that free of charge." It was the thing to remember is that although he did it for Muslims, because Muslims were the ones who were being subjected to this thing, he did not restrict the use of that water to Muslims. Remember, there were Jews living there were Christians living there were idol worshippers living there, but he just gave the well and said anyone can go and get water from that free. And unfortunately, this has what has gone out of fashion amongst the Muslims. When we want to help someone, the first thing is we ask them their religion, then we ask their sect, then we ask which country they come from, then we ask which province they come from, then we ask what family they belong to, then we ask what subcaste they belong to. This is un-Islamic. When a newly qualified doctor went to the promised Messiah, Hazrat Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Sahib of Qadian, and asked for guidance on how to practice medicine, the promised Messiah ﷺ said that when someone comes to you for treatment, the only thing that you should see is that a human being in distress is asking you for help, and God has put in your hand the skills to relieve that man's distress. The thought of his color, creed, caste, religion, sect must never enter your head. And that is what has gone missing from the current Muslims that we see. That shows when we say, let us implement Islamic teaching, and if only we implemented Islamic teaching, everything would be fine. This is what we forget, what Islamic teaching is. We don't mean Islamic teaching, we mean what will benefit our caste or creed or family, etc. If you believe that all things ultimately belong to God, then we must spend everything we have beyond what is necessary for the sake of God. And the Quran says this specifically. They ask you how much they are to spend. This is in the way of Allah. People ask you how much they should spend in the way of Allah. Tell them everything beyond your needs. So Islam allows you to do business. Islam allows you to do a job. It allows you to do all of these things. It allows you to make a profit. It doesn't ban or bar initiative. But then it says that anything over and above what you need, you should use to help humanity, all of humanity. You see, when we stress the Sunnah of the Holy Prophet Muhammad, then I will end with this, we forget one thing, that he said goodness is how well you treat God's creation, not just human beings. The Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam was walking with his companions, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, and he saw a woman, and she had taken her shoes off, and she was running. It was hot. She was running on burning sand. She was running to a well, taking some water from the well in that shoe, then running across burning sand. She was going to a dog, gasping for breath, gasping for life, and pouring that water in that dog's mouth. And then back to the well. More water, back to the dog. That dog was dying of thirst. And this woman was trying to relieve that dog's distress. And the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, all the doors of heavens are open for that woman. And the companions of the Holy Prophet said, O Prophet of Allah, her reputation is not good. And the Holy Prophet said, that doesn't matter. She's bearing pain, running barefoot on burning hot sand. She's bearing pain to relieve the distress of one of God's creatures. That is above and beyond anything. And for this act of goodness, God will overlook everything. Now compare that with another example, that a woman, very pious, said her prayers meticulously, fasted, etc. She was known as being very pious and righteous throughout Medina. He passed away. And the companions, radiallahu ta'ala anhum, were discussing about how high that woman's station is going to be in heaven. And the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam said, surely she's in hell. Surely she is in hell. And the companions were staggered. And they said, O Prophet of Allah, but her prayers and her fasting and so on, would they count for nothing? And the Holy Prophet said, she had a cat, and she did not feed the cat properly. And she would not let that cat go out into fresh air from her room. She locked that cat up. And he said, for inflicting that distress on one of God's creatures, she will be punished. So you can see how wide and broad the requirement of sadaqah and charity is in Islam. It extends beyond human beings. It extends beyond animals. It applies to everything, to your environment, to water, to air, to trees, to birds and bees, and so on. And all of that comes within Sadaqah. Now I said, because Sadaqah is not supposed to be monetary. It may be anything that you can do. If you can help in any way, anyone or anything, even if it means you're helping the environment so that air is clean, so that water is clean, all of that comes under Sadaqah. As I said, a kind word to someone, sympathy for someone, a good word to someone who's lonely. It is all Sadaqah. I think this wraps up our lessons in Islam on charity. Inshallah, um, next week we will turn to the next pillar of Islam. That will be next Saturday at 9 a.m. We used to have these on Sunday at 1 p.m., but we've changed the time so that they are on Saturday at 9 o'clock in the morning UK time. And these lessons are only in English because they're aimed mainly at our brothers in Florida and Texas and Dominican Republic who recently embraced Islam, and they want to not only just learn about it themselves, but they also want to spread it to other people around. With this, until we meet again with our broadcast tomorrow morning at 9 a.m., Call of the Promised Messiah, I end with the prayer that whoever you are and wherever you are, may Allah keep all of you safe and sound and free from harm. Assalamu alaikum, Khuda Hafiz, and goodbye.